Hello, good morning. This is the Line and Zion coming at you unfiltered. It's time for a new episode. We're going to talk about some big things here. Big things are happening. Unfortunately, once again, Israel is being put in a different standard, a new standard. Always, every day, we find ourselves singled out. I wonder why. What's the mystery here? Why does Israel always manage to find itself to be the carve out, the exception to the rule? There is a great line in the Torah that I has been in the front window of my ideas on Israel for a long time. You can find it in the book of Numbers, which is called in Hebrew Bamidbar, which is a bad translation, by the way. Bamidbar means in the desert, Midbar. Um, and it's when the prophet Bilam, non-Jewish prophet Bilam, is sitting on the cliffs, standing on the cliffs of the Sinai desert, attempting to curse the Jewish people in the service of a king who's mightily afraid of this nation and what their destiny is. And he gives honor and money to this prophet who is venal and disgusting, and and yet is still able to commune with the creator and curse. He tries to and attempts to, but he cannot. And one line that he says that echoes an eternity is, the nation shall dwell alone and not be reckoned among the nations. In Hebrew, hen am levadad yishkon yevagoyim lo yit chavashav. And this is where we are today. I mean, it perfectly exemplifies Israel as a nation that shall dwell alone and not be reckoned. We see last week the ICC came out with an extraordinary ruling. And I'll take it to task just like anybody else. I'm sure if you know about it, you probably already know some of it, but I'll give you the highlights. It's basically um, has 120 signatories on it, and it only has jurisdiction over the people who sign on to it. Israel did not sign on to it, and you have to be a state. And guess what? Palestine isn't a state. And if it was a state, who's signing on behalf of Palestine? The PA, the Palestinian Authority, a basically terror-light organization who pays annuities to dead terrorist families and names streets after them, and teaches their children to love the Shaheed. These guys, and they're signing off for who? For Gaza and Hamas. So this make believe, standing, which doesn't exist. And they send arrest warrants. Who do they send arrest warrants to? They sent arrest warrants to Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. But why didn't they send one to Benny Gantz? He was also in the war cabinet. Maybe because you're just hoping he might be replacing Netanyahu. But they also sent another one to say, even-handed, Mahmoud Death. But he was killed. So you're handing an indictment, prosecution to a dead man. It's just like absurd stuff. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And who's the one doing the investigation? It's Karim Khan, a now formally investigated sexual, basically for sexual harassment, who's related to his brother, a former MP of Wakefield, Imran Khan, who was convicted of sexual crimes against children. What a family. Wow. And you can see that once this guy was indicted or being investigated, all of a sudden he made a lot of moves to change the course of this investigation. So there's a cloud over this guy now, and it gets worse. The three-panel judge, the one judge that was basically the stickler, she's a judge from Romania named Motok, I think her name is. She mysteriously resigns for health reasons, which she doesn't have to tell anybody the reasons because they're health reasons and she shouldn't have to go into it. Who does she get replaced by? A Slovenian judge. By the way, Slovenia being one of the 4 or 5 European countries that have formally recognized a Palestinian state after one of the worst massacres of Jews in, I think, generation. And that's their reward. They get recognized. So a judge, very sympathetic, gets now replaces the one judge that was basically saying, I don't think this is going to actually pass mustard. So they indict this. They send an indictment now, and all the Europeans are jumping on the bandwagon, but they don't understand. This is like going to be used against fellow democracies fighting rogue states and terror states. This is they're basically celebrating tools that'll be used against them if they decide to fight their own jihadists and terrorists. Lest we remind that Israel's fighting a defensive war. There were no IDF soldiers in Gaza on October 6th. And after this mayhem and mass murdering, mass raping, mass hostage taking, they said they'd do it over again and again and again. And so what's the indictment? Idea of famine. That Israel's doing a famine. Mind you, that the International Famine Review Committee on June 30th said that there wasn't one happening. I only cite it because there's so many few international bodies that are willing to come out for Israel, and they're not hacked and cuckolded by the Pallywood crowd, but they actually did. And they're ignoring the fact that I think Hamas has only said that the 41 children have died of malnutrition, which I don't believe at all. But that's even Hamas saying. We're not talking about hundreds and thousands of people, and Hamas making them, which I don't believe at all. Just to give you some kind of idea of what we're talking about, I think 57,000 trucks of food have been brought into Gaza, over 1.1 million tons. And really most of this goes to Hamas. We're literally feeding Hamas. So there's a total argument why Israel shouldn't be doing this. And everybody likes to forget this. Egypt has refused to take refugees in. So keep that in mind when you say all these people, and here you have the largest Arab state refusing to open its borders for all these humanitarian causes, but mum's the word, right? And of course, Hamas is cheering for all this stuff. Hamas, like, they're in glee. They love this stuff. I mean, literally, they use their Gazans as PR drones and human shields, and the world just laps it up, eats it up, and then they're doing the bidding. They can't defeat the Jews on the battlefield. Of course, they can't. We're warriors now. This is not 2,000 years of weak-kneed Jews, court Jews, Jews that have to run from country to country. We have a country of our own now, Zionism. And so they know they can't defeat us on the battlefield. So what do? They rely on the Western sympathizers who love the idea of a Jewish monster. So we have this whole cheering squad now going on. Everybody loves it. The Mehdi Hassans will use it for their own like propaganda, Gaulish, phrases of you have a war criminal, you're defending a war criminal. They'll throw it out because they love the radicalized statement, right? There's the shocking statement. One thing you can always rely on these people to be is the radicalizers of a dialogue. If they can say that Jews are being Nazis, they'll say it. If they can say that the Jews are responding to a war crime is a war crime, they'll say it. This is inversion and radicalization is literally how this narrative works. You don't, Tucker Carlson loves to say the things they accuse you of is what they're guilty of. My thing is all you can expect is radicalization of the dialogue and an inversion of the morality and of the truth. And that's it. There's no other playbook that these guys use. But in the end, I would just say we love these shows now, like, these investigation profiler, psychological profiler shows. Look at the actors, look at the crime. The actors, a democratic, nation that had 5 elections in like 6 years, has had women prime ministers. Their women serve in the army. They're one of the most educated nations on earth. Look at the OECD countries and where Israel is in terms of education. Look at our education universities, the Weizmann Institute, the Technion. I mean, we have some of the greatest research papers coming out of Israel, drip irrigation, stuff on processor chips. Where does Intel have its biggest processing chip? In Israel. You don't do that in a closed society. You do that in an open society. Okay, so and then the other actor, you go to Gaza and you have literally like 3-year-olds holding Kalashnikovs, like citing verse of killing the Jews. You look at their programming on the television, and what do you get? It's a joke. This whole thing is a joke. They don't have women's rights. They don't have minority rights. A Jew couldn't walk there. If I had a sit on, and it would be a great experiment. I ask anybody, take a sit, put them on and a kippah, walk down Gaza, and it's all because of the occupation, right? That they hate Jews. And just have a conversation about Jews. Just a random interview that you would never allowed. But Israel has one of the most correspondents in its capital than any country in the entire world. So those are the actors in the supposed crime. Let's look at the crime itself. You have October 7th and the tens of thousands of rockets that have come before and after that, indiscriminately launched from civilian centers onto civilian centers, a double war crime. And then you have October 7th. You have mass rapes, mass murders, mass hostages. And they say there's no rapes. Sorry, we didn't go there while we were collecting all the dead bodies and the maimed corpses and the burnt out houses and then pick up the condoms. We were so busy that day dealing with hundreds and hundreds of bodies, we didn't think we were going to need to prove it to you ghouls, you Israel haters who don't allow the Jews to even have their suffering. Hence, Holocaust denial is now the rage, isn't it? Wonder why. Yeah, think about it. How many Jews live in Jordan? How many Jews live in Egypt? How many Jews live in Gaza or the Palestinian territories? How many Jews live in Iraq? And how many Jews lived there 100 years ago? Why are there no Jews now? These are societies that have huge anti Semitic problems, and nobody wants to deal with the elephant in the room. And so we have the crime, we have the parties involved, and what's the Israel's crime? We found 500 kilometers of terror tunnels documented. We show videos of terrorists with hostages in hospitals, documented. We have them shooting rockets indiscriminately into Israel towns, documented. We have the mass murders of the Nova Fest, documented. We have kibbutzim, civilian houses burned to the ground, documented. We have 3-year-olds hostages, documented. What do you have? What do you have? You claim terrorists and kids that throw rocks the size of heads as like innocent people as being hostages. How pathetic. You consider an army that drops leaflets, makes phone calls, brings 50,000 trucks, million plus tons of food as trying to polio vaccines. That's what you got as the crimes with a 1-to-1 casualty of civilian to terrorist ratio. That's what you got. Pathetic. Just a normal look of NCSY. What was these shows, real crime shows. If you like those shows so much, just do a little look inside here, and it's very clear who the criminal is and who the victim is. And this is the greatest victim shaming in the world. But we expect it. It's one of the great reasons why somebody can look at the Jews and be like, there's something obviously going on here. There's something. These guys have been victimized for centuries and centuries and centuries, for millennia. And here is just the next chapter. As I said, we are a nation that shall dwell alone and not be reckoned with. Thank God there's a Jewish state. Thank God we have an army to defend us for the first time in 2,000 years, and we're not going to apologize. We don't fear evil, we destroy it. Have a good day.